Greetings, GameCola faithful, and welcome to the GameCola Podcast. This is podcast number 85, and with me today we have Joseph Martin, Nathaniel Hoover, Anna Bryniarski, and Shannon Hoover. Everyone introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Joseph Martin. I'm the first person that Jeddy introduced, so I'm going to talk first. I write things on the GameCola, and I do the podcast on the GameCola, like this one that you're listening to, if that is a good an indication of things. I'm done. You could go on to the next person now.
I'm Nathaniel Hoover. I'm a staff writer and editor, and I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I've also started writing the Lost Art of Good Game Design column. We'll see how long that goes.
Hi, I'm Anna Bryniarski, and I play video games sometimes, mostly just Sims.
I'm Shannon Hoover, and I'm a staff writer for GameCola, even though I haven't written that much recently. I've been doing a lot of the GameCola YouTube channel events, so I was in the Sims video most recently.
And yay, first podcast.
And this is my first podcast, yay!
Well,
Yay!
kind of.
Well,
First
my first
official.
official GameCola podcast, like monthly
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah, the podcast. It's your first the podcast.
It is my first the podcast.
We should start calling it the podcast, like every time it's referenced, like the necessary article.
I usually just like to distinguish it, I'll call it the monthly podcast.
I don't know, like I can't even think of a sentence now that doesn't necessitate the that I could then insert it into, like
The GameCola Podcast.
yeah, without
Let's
doubling it.
Let's listen to the latest installment of the game. No, that doesn't work
Yeah,
at all.
see, like, yeah, it would end up being the GameCola Podcast. Is there a situation? Because, like...
Do you
Oh,
want to
no,
listen
I'm sorry,
to...
that would be right. Let's listen to the GameCola podcast if we weren't being discriminating.
Oh, if we were talking about, like, have you ever listened to any the GameCola Podcast? But that's still... It's not wrong enough to be recognizable.
Dr. The Funk would know what to do here.
Exactly.
Oh god.
Yes, for those of you not familiar, you need to go watch the last GameCola Family Game Night.
When we were playing Oregon Trail, something I noticed, I don't know, I probably should have looked it up at some point, but does it usually do it so that the trail leader is the last person to die? Because I feel like that happened every single time.
I would
Like
suspect that's the case, but...
The version I played, it didn't do that, but maybe in that version it does.
Because I feel like how many times did we go through? We went through 3 times, and I feel like it happened all 3 times. Like, nothing happened to the trail leader. He didn't get sick or hurt or anything until everyone else was dead.
Well, no one died when I was leader, so
You're just that good.
yeah.
So, Joe, did I hear tell that you wanted to talk about Mega Man X2?
I did. I
Yes.
did want to talk about Mega Man. So, okay. I recently purchased it from the Wii U eShop. I purchased it, and so what I like to do with the Mega Man games is instead of like just going straight to the internet and looking up all the boss weaknesses and which ones you should go to first and like where all the secrets are, I try to just play it through once without looking anything up.
As you
Try to
should.
figure it out. And then after, I'll like look things up and find things and then beat the game. And so like, I wanted to like talk about it because like I have my opinions, but then I also like I've only played it twice, which I don't know, for a Mega Man game it feels like you need to play it a lot to really solidify, which is weird because like most games you like play once and then you're like, well, that I understand, this is how I feel about this game. But I played it like twice, one right after the other, and I had very different feelings when I was playing it each time. So I like it. I didn't like it as much as X, mainly because, I don't know, it felt like you really needed to have the power-ups to do the castle stages. Like, the ones that I didn't find, like, it just got to a point where it got really hard for me. Like, almost impossibly hard. That's one of the things.
Okay.
And also there were a couple parts where it didn't seem, mostly in the later stages, where it didn't seem some things were thought out. Like, there's one part where...
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I might not be talking about the first thing, but there's one part where you have to get over this big old bed of spikes.
Yep.
And it's like you can't see the other end, but you're like, all right, I'll do it. And if you have the charged up crystal weapon, you can make a platform, but otherwise you just kind of have to go for it, which I did because I didn't find the charged up weapon thing in the first run. So you go over it, and it's like, there's the other end, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you get to another one, like right after it, and that one you can't jump over. I was like, oh, that's false advertising. And it's like right before a checkpoint too, and so you had to start all the way back at the beginning of the level. I was frustrated about that. But then there are also just some other parts in that level too, where like enemy respawns are like in weird places so that you can destroy an enemy and it instantly returns. There were a few things like that which weren't in Mega Man X, I don't think, that frustrated the game with me.
Yeah, Mega Man X2 in the Fortress stages especially starts to get a little more of that Mega Man 2, like original NES Mega Man 2 feel to it, where you have some of the puzzle challenges in the Fortress stages, because the assumption is that you've worked with the special weapons and you know X's moveset well enough that you can start pulling off some of the crazier stunts. But, you know, one thing that maybe you wouldn't have noticed is that you can freeze enemies in a crystal that you can stand on with Crystal Snail's weapon. And that's sort of the crux of the end of that one stage. And then you've got the platforms where you jump on them and they change direction every time you jump on them. And you've got these enemies that are randomly spawning and falling on you, and you need to somehow navigate to the top and beyond the top if you want a super secret. So it really ramps it up without giving you too much prep earlier on. So I also had some challenges with that the first time around.
It was just like real, like before, like I knew that like I wasn't getting all the heart containers and I wasn't getting all the sub tanks, and I was like okay with that. And I didn't get like, because I didn't find the air dash the first time around, and I think that one's pretty. Also, yeah, some of the power ups were like, when I went back and like looked up where they were, some of them were in some. I'm thinking of Crystal Snail's heart container.
So there's the one where you need to hop in the ride armor,
right,
and then dash off the edge of this teensy ledge, hop, fly, fire your thrusters to get over there, and then leap out of it, and then because the platform you're trying to get to is just slightly too far away, bring out Wire Sponge's weapon, and then lash out to connect to the wall at the very bottom of the screen before you fall off, so that you connect over it, and then you start sliding down the wall, and then can wall kick up to your power-up.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you can't get back from there, so you kind of need to have beaten the stage and use the exit utility, or just
there's a little
Oh, there is a platform. It's been a little while since I've played it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's things like that. Like, yes, technically I can do this, but who designed this? Like in Wheelgator stage.
It's hard enough to do it, but also to figure it out yourself. Like, to know that you have to jump this pit. I don't know. It seemed like kind of a stretch.
Well, yeah, and the trial and error involved in figuring out, is this something I can do in the first place with what I've got? And if so, what specifically do I use? And if so, am I practicing this well, or am I, just doing this wrong anyhow? Another one, Wheelgator stage. You've got this wall of spikes, and at the very top of the wall, there's this tiny little ledge where you can technically wall kick, I think, and then you've got the heart tank on top. And you somehow need to jump up this wall of spikes, which is a little too far away from the enemies that you can get hit by, and then use your invincibility frames to climb up it. So you need to do some sort of crazy air dash, or you need to charge up Flame... Why did I want to call him Flame Rooster? I've been playing X8. There's no Rooster in here. Flame... Not Mammoth, that's the first... Too many flames in the X series.
Flame Stag.
Thank you, Flame Stag. Charge up his weapon and launch yourself across, and then hope you don't die on the spikes and the tiny little pixel that you have to work with. So there's a lot of ones like, yeah, okay, I can do this, but it's very silly.
Mm-hmm. I did actually do the get hit and then go up the spikes version of that.
I think I tried that several times and just found it was easier to dash over than try and lure things over to me.
But yeah, I did like a lot of the weapons, though. Let's see. Which one? Once I figured out what the deal with the crystal weapon was. Because at first, I just, through trial and error, I just kept choosing the enemies that it didn't do anything to. So for a while, I thought that the purpose of Crystal Snail's weapon was
just to annoy
bounce off of enemies and do no damage. Every single time I tried to use it on something, it did not work. So once I figured out that you can use them for platforms, that was cool. Wire Sponge's weapon, I couldn't get it to, like, work most of the time. Like, it didn't seem to, like, do as advertised as much.
Yeah, I think you need to keep the button held down for one thing, and I don't think it always sticks like it's supposed to.
Yeah, it gets weird. Like, it works really well if you're standing on the ground and then use it to pull you over, but if you're, like, moving in the air, sometimes it just, like, doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of it.
Although, talking about X2, I'm thinking about this, and also our poor other podcasters who either haven't played it or couldn't care less. I saw a couple of clips from the video. I want to sit down and watch the whole thing that somebody shared with me, of the original Mega Man X and Mega Man X2 being played simultaneously using the same controller with buttons mapped with, two different emulators? So playing through the entire game using, when I press jump, X1 and X2 both jump. When I hit fire, X1 and X2 both fire.
That was
and
impressive.
Just the amount of practice and prep you would have needed to do to make that work. And of course, they do it with style. They land the crushing blow on both final bosses at the same time. And so there are a couple times where they just delay going into the boss chamber to help things sync up better.
That
Very
was
cool to watch.
That was really cool.
Or are both the games secretly exactly the same?
Like you're watching.
Well, that may be accurate for other games in the series.
Then now it's time to move on to X3 and continue through that series. Oh, I did really like which I didn't really notice until my second playthrough because that's sort of what it affects. But like having the bosses, the
X-Hunters.
The X-Hunters, yeah. Like come in to different stages sort of like gives you encouragement, like when you replay the stages, to like do them in a different order instead of just sticking to one order.
Right.
Because you can be like, well, if he's in this stage, do I want to get him now while he's in this stage because it's really easy to get to the secret boss chamber in this stage? Or do I want to, go and get his weakness before I confront them? So I liked that. Like how it lets you skip a boss battle if you get them all.
So, okay, you were talking about X3 shortly ago, and I was going to mention that it's probably my favorite X game, or close to it, despite the fact that I really don't care much for the fortress stages. I really like all of the 8 Mavericks. Let me get my terminology straight. I like the 8 Maverick stages. I like all the hidden secrets and all the way that you build, because there's a lot of power-ups to find. And then you get off to the boss stages, and parts of them are good, and then parts of them are... It just has to happen the same way. Like, there's this one vertical section where you're just standing on something that takes you up vertically, and you just need to kind of stand there for a while and wait for it, and there's really only one way to get through that section. So there's a couple of parts like that later on where there's not much replay value. You do it once, and then you're done with it. So my question, because we always need conversation topics, is there any other video game for you all that you generally really like, despite some horrible flaw or some part of it that you really don't like?
The thing is that, like, I can think that there are, but I can't think of them at the moment.
Same, yeah.
I can think, yeah.
I really like Deponia, even though the main character is a huge jerk.
I will second you on that one.
Yeah.
I love the world, I love the puzzles, I love the side characters and the art and the music. I just really wanted to put Rufus in a blender and keep playing as Goal.
Yeah, exactly. I really just do not like him.
He really has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
He doesn't, and I keep trying to find something, but there's nothing there.
I mean, how many times would everyone have ended up happily ever after if he wasn't in the game?
A lot of times. I'm still trying to finish the last one, but sometimes I have to take a break.
I just marathoned through all the games not too long ago, because I had started the first one, lost the capability to play it on the computer I was playing it on, and just restarted it.
Yeah, that's a good game.
I think, like, the one that comes to mind now is Final Fantasy Legend, because...
The Game Boy one.
Yes. And there's two things that if you had one but not the other, it would have worked a lot better, because you have both weapons with limited durability. So like every single time you use them, that's one less time you can use them. You know, like you have a limited number of uses on your weapons. And there's no leveling up. Like if you're playing humans, then you have to pay for level up items. If you're playing as monsters, you have to like get meat and hope that you're lucky enough to get like an upgrade, or you just permanently stay weak and eventually pay to replace them with a different character.
And your weapons wear out? It's like you're leveling down the whole game.
Exactly, and I remember one time, because like I originally played and I got to the end somehow when I was like 8, and then I came back when I was like 18. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just sit and I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna make so much money that I can buy all the weapons, and it never happened. Like, the things just cost so much, the durability wears out so quickly that you can never get ahead.
It sounds like you're playing the hard version of Paper Mario Sticker Star, because it's like structured the exact same way, except completely to the other side of you always have the most powerful equipment, whatever the game's going to give you. You don't level up, and you're supposed to get coins so that you can purchase more equipment that, you know, you lose it every single time you use it. So you get like a sticker, and then that's a move, and you use the sticker, and then it's used up.
Yeah.
And so you get money to buy more stickers. But like sort of like the opposite of your game, you collect stickers, and you collect so much money to buy stickers that you're never in a situation where you can't just get whatever you want. Like, you just always have the strongest items available to you. You'll never run out. And it's like the exact opposite problem of that game.
But Jeddy, you said this is a game that you liked?
Okay, and that's the thing, is I don't know why I even like this game, because the ending is terrible. Like, there's something about it that it has that Dragon Warrior quality of, it's just a very basic RPG. It has all the things you want from a late 80s RPG. You know, you fight things repeatedly. And it has that sort of like the Chrysalis story, where you know that there's something great here, even though it's not actually in the game. So there was always something about this game, and I feel like I would probably like it in the same way that I like Chrysalis or Dragon Warrior or whatever, if it wasn't a nightmare to play.
A game that I love, like, definitely it's one of my favorite games, but it does have like a pretty glaring flaw, would be Kid Icarus Uprising. Because it's a wonderful game. It's super fun. It's like one of the rare sort of Nintendo-ish games that like has dialogue, has like spoken voice acting, and it's
Well, I mean, the Mario games have Mario. He talks a lot. It's a him, Mario.
Yes, but like that's a dialogue, not just like characters talking to each other. Sort of like the Paper Mario series, like has that is sort of known for it being funny. But it's very funny. It sounds like sort of like you're playing a Saturday morning cartoon, to the point where like the voice actors that they use, some of them are voice actors for lots of Saturday morning cartoons. But one of the big flaws of it is that the way you control it is weird, to the point, in a sense, that it's hard to hold the system in the way it wants you to control it.
I think that's any 3D DS game.
But not just like to see the 3D effect, like even if you turned off the 3D effect. Like,
well, no, I meant 3D game, like not view it in 3D, but any, your Banjo-Kazooie, your Super Mario 64, like those style of not 2D Super Mario Brothers games. Because right. I had that same problem with Metroid Prime Hunters, where the control, I couldn't play for more than half an hour because the way I had to hold it to make all the buttons work properly and the touchpad and everything, it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I haven't played that one, but I just remember that was like the general consensus was like this was the game's glaring flaw. Like, what you had to do is you had to take the 3DS, and in your left hand you'd hold it pretty much normally. You had to have your thumb on the circle pad, and then I think you would use the L button. But then on the other one, you had to hold the stylus and use the stylus like the whole time. And like you were always using the stylus and like tapping the stylus. And so like you kind of had to hold the whole system with your left hand and then sort of like awkwardly support it with your right hand, like whatever fingers you didn't need to use to hold the stylus. And it's something that, like, for a while, like, I couldn't play for, like, more than half an hour before my hand would, like, get cramped and I'd have to stop. It's gotten to the point now where I've played it so much that I guess my hands have gotten used to it, so now it's not a problem at all.
Except you can't hold a pencil anymore because your hand is so cramped and controlled.
Oh, yeah. No, my hand, everyone's like, what happened to your hand? And I said, oh, Kid Icarus Uprising, and they just nod knowingly. So yeah, that would be that. I got over it, but I can definitely see how for some people it's just like they can't, like, the barrier to entry. And if you don't want to get hand cramps, I can totally see why that would be frustrating.
I just thought of another game. I recently played Rhythm Thief, and it's a really good game for the 3DS. But like they tried to use the gyroscope controls, and it didn't work as well as it should have. It was a bit hard to get things right, I guess. And then something else is that it would take down your score a lot if you missed something towards the end of the song. And that was a little annoying, but otherwise it's a really, really good game.
What were you supposed to do with the gyroscope? Like, in terms of...
You were aiming at things and then trying to hit them to the rhythm.
That's the game that No Lynch fan reviewed, isn't it?
I was going to say, it sounds familiar.
He's at least talked about it a ton on Twitter with Anna.
Yeah, with me. I looked it up because I was thinking I might do a review of it. He did Rhythm Heaven.
Oh, he did
Harmonite.
He did Harmonite and Rhythm Heaven. Okay.
Oh,
but yeah.
And then he just talks about rhythm. He likes a lot of music games on the DS. I never really made that connection that's all that he does.
I feel like gyroscopes are one of those things, because like you mentioned that the gyroscope controls could have been better, and I was thinking about it, it's like, I feel like gyroscope controls are something that they've been working on for a long time, to the point where I feel like for handheld systems, they should have figured it out by now. Because I remember playing gyroscope games for the Game Boy Advance, where you had to get a special cartridge. The cartridge had a little, I guess, a little mini sort of weighted thing, and you could tilt it. There was a Yoshi game that had that. I wonder what it was called, Yoshi Tilt and something.
Mobile games have that all the time.
Yeah.
Yoshi's Topsy Turvy? Maybe that's what it was called. It was some Yoshi's Island type game.
I gave up on gyroscopic controls after playing Sonic and the Magic Rings for all of half an hour, and all of your control was tilting. You didn't really press buttons. You just tilted, and it didn't do what you wanted it to. And Super Mario Galaxy, where you're riding, I think it's on top of the ball, like the giant hamster ball. You're either in it or on it. I started to block it out of my memory. And you need to gently tilt your controller, your Wiimote, in a particular direction, and then he starts rolling that way, and then he falls down a hole, and then you try it again, and then he falls down another hole, and then he falls down the same hole, and then a different hole, and then he runs into another hole. You don't have the fine-tuned precision that's sort of required for some of those really thin stretches.
I don't know. I've played those
You're wrong.
sections. I don't remember how hard it was when I first played it, but I played through Mario Galaxy a bunch of times. At least to the 60 star you can fight Bowser. I've played I think 4 times now.
But see, you're younger than I am. You're of the generation where motion controls was a thing and not a thing.
I would say that the manta ray sections were ones where the motion controls were a lot more iffy.
Yeah, I played as little of that game as possible because it was all about the controls. The game itself was acceptable, but I could never get Mario to control the way I wanted him to. Because I think of Mario 64, I think of Mario Sunshine, kind of similar control schemes where Mario's got a certain way of moving and he's usually pretty sprightly. And then Mario Galaxy, it's like slogging through molasses every time I want to go somewhere, do something. It never felt like he moved the way it was supposed to. until he was underwater, and then it felt kind of normal, which is bizarre because every other water... I posted about one of the few things that I've actually tweeted on Twitter, commenting on the situation where one of the few games I've ever played where the water levels were the best part of the game. Yeah, I had some serious control issues with that game.
See, I had serious control issues with not all of Sunshine, but like the latter part of Sunshine. Because like
they do start asking a lot of you later on.
And, like, sometimes, like, things just don't work the way they're supposed to. And I think, like, the parts that didn't work, they sort of saved it for the end. But I think it's kind of like, when you don't have Flood, it's, like, really apparent that the controls are a lot less refined than they might feel like with Flood. Because with Flood, like, you know, if you miss a jump, you can hover until you're in the right spot. But then, without it, you didn't. But then, like I'm thinking of the Pachinko machine level.
The worst.
Lots of the levels where you have to like steer a thing using the hose.
Equally
like,
the worst. Like the last level, you're in the boat and you're trying
Yeah.
That's the last level where you're in the boat and then you're trying to spray yourself down the river of lava and can't get yourself anywhere.
Like towards the end and like in all of like is it the 8th? The ones that are unlocked after you beat the boss the first time, or I don't know. I think they're the 8th ones, yeah. Where it's like a special one that sort of takes place after the story, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of those like just started to randomly introduce new movement mechanics that just didn't work. Or elements in the big like island place where like you start and you have to go across a bridge and that's the first thing you have to do every single time.
Is that Piazza Village?
Yeah, that one. The last level in it, you have all these like floating seedling things everywhere. I don't remember what are those things called? Like that you get on like a flower and then you blow it and they all go flying off in the wind.
Yeah, I forget what they're called.
Dandelion?
They are basically dandelions. I think they have a specific name, but I don't remember.
Mm-hmm. But
we'll
like so there's a bunch of them, but like one time like I was just walking around because you don't actually really use them for anything in the level because they don't move reliably. Like I think there's one time where you have to use it to get a red coin. And that's it. And they don't move reliably, which is like whatever, because it does look kind of cool. But then like I was just like walking around, like trying to get stuff, and I like accidentally grabbed onto one. Then it floated me through the stage, where I subsequently died because I got flattened by the stage that I was inside of, because Mario cannot occupy the same space as a solid object. And that was just one of those points where I'm like, okay, guys, you didn't test this. Like, I can see why it's at the very end of the game and I can't remember anymore because it's been a while, but there were towards the end specifically, there were lots of sections where like they just kept throwing in new weird controlling mechanics or like being in situations where the controls, like the fact that the controls were really being supported by the fact that Flood existed. Like, the only reason that the controls are tolerable is because you have Flood in a lot of situations to make up for how imprecise they are. Was that a complete thought? I don't remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a complete thought. Bravo.
I feel like there were lots of commas in that sentence that probably didn't need to be there.
I think the most recent Super Mario game that I've played is literally Super Mario World. Like, I've touched Super Mario 64 once or twice. That's about it.
I played Super Mario 64 a while ago. It's been a while, so I don't remember. I hear mixed things about the controls for that game. Some people are like, yeah, it works exactly as I expected it to. Other people are like, this is just early 3D controls. They don't work because they're early. And like, most people would be like, yeah, because they're early 3D controls. It makes sense, but still, it's very frustrating to use them.
Early 3D controls or not, it, for the most part, allows you to do everything that you need to do. Wall jumping is still tricky, and the camera controls get you tripped up in a couple of places. But for the most part, you don't need to do anything the controls don't easily allow you to do.
Mm-hmm. Like, you got all those, and you also have all those little extra things that you can do to like you can, if you want to stay in the air a little longer, you can like do a kick, which I don't think is useful for anything else.
No, you can kick enemies.
Right, but like, don't you have to be standing perfectly still? Or no. I don't know.
If you stand still, you punch. If you're in the air, you kick. And so you've got a better chance of either jumping on them or kicking them if you jump kick.
Maybe it was just the way I played, but if I was in the air and about to attack, it would always end up diving, which usually wasn't a problem. I don't think it ever was a problem.
Yeah, that's true. That happens.
I just feel like you have to wait for an enemy to come up to you so that you can kind of stationarily kick them, or
I think it's
jump into them.
It's been a little while since I played this one too. I think it's press jump and attack at the same time, and that does a kick.
Maybe it was a while ago. Maybe I just didn't get that nuance at the time. And it's fun to dive into enemies, so it's not like I need something better than flying face first into my foes.
I'm such a terrible person when it comes to playing Mario 64. I don't know if I've told this story before on GameCola, but one of my favorite things to do, because I'm awful, is in the wonderful snow level. At the top of the mountain, you got the little baby penguin that you're supposed to return to its mama, and you've got the fake baby penguin, too, that's supposed to throw you off, and you bring it down like, that's not my baby! So I bring down both of the penguins because I make it happen, and boom, here's a baby, and congratulations, you've adopted another baby. And she's like, oh, thank you so much, it's so wonderful. I'm like, haha, I'm going to pick up your baby now. And then I start running away, and then the mama penguin starts chasing after you like, my baby, my baby. And I just go up to the edge of the stage and casually drop him off the edge. And then the mama starts, climbing around and getting angry. And I just pick up the other fake baby penguin and just hand it over like, here you go. And I'm awful.
Why did I marry you again?
I think there have been a couple times, but I feel like at least once I tried to do that, and I ended up falling off the stage.
Serves you right.
Because you have to get, right up on the edge, because then you don't throw it, you have to, let it go.
Right.
So you have to be, right up on the edge. And it's an ice level, so it's a little slippery. I don't remember if that section was particularly slippery. It's been a while, as I've said.
I have a new question.
Woohoo!
Has anyone gone into a game thinking they'll absolutely hate it, but come out liking it, a lot?
I think normally if I don't like a game, I don't play it.
Well, I don't know. Out of curiosity's sake, you play it.
Yeah.
I have a story, and it's called Hatoful Boyfriend, and it sucks. I went into that game thinking I'd hate it, but I ended up liking it a lot, so... I was just wondering if anyone else has done that.
I did that with Castlevania, actually. A couple years back, I got on a Konami kick because I'd grown up, and this one I have mentioned on GameCola before. I grew up playing Gradius with my dad. It was one of the first NES games that I owned. Spaceships, shooting stuff, cool things. But never played the rest of the series. And then a couple years back, I said, oh, hey, Wii Virtual Console has a Gradius game or two. I'm interested to try this. Let's see what Gradius 2 is like. And I play that. I'm like, this is good. This is exciting. I like this. This is fun. And so I was hooked. And then I played Gradius 3, and I played Life Force, and then I started finding all the other Gradius games that I could find for any system I owned. And then I said, wait a second, if this is how I feel about Gradius, I should look into other Konami games. There's a whole huge Castlevania series that I've barely touched. I played 1 and couldn't really stand it. Played 2, borrowed it from somebody, and kind of enjoyed it. Didn't really get anywhere, but, maybe I should get... Oh, and I played Super Castlevania 4 several times in different places, gradually making more progress every time I played it at somebody's house, but never getting to the end. So I said, okay, let's try out Castlevania. But I didn't think I was going to like it because my experience with the earlier parts of the series were all, I think as Christian Porter put it, Robo Belmont, where he just does not move at all. And as we've established from Super Mario Galaxy, control is really important to me because it makes up for a lot of other challenges that might not be so good if you can actually do them the way you want to. So I was concerned about the controls being really terrible, and I'm not, Halloween is one of my least favorite holidays, so any of the, the gothic, occult kind of themes that go in with the zombies and the ghouls and all of those other things. I don't know, I looked at it and I said, I will probably not like this, but it turns out I'm really big on gameplay. Gameplay is paramount, and everything else is just nice to have. So I found I really like the gameplay of some of the later games, like Harmony of Dissonance, Aria of Sorrow, and then Rondo of Blood, which I wrote a review about. Really enjoyed that one, because that had refined the old blocky Belmont movement as far as it was going to get. So I found I kind of really liked the series and was not expecting that to be the case.
Yeah, what I've heard about sort of like from people who like the early Castlevania, the way they sort of approach it mentally and enjoy it is like they see it as a game where you sort of work with the control.
Yeah.
Like everyone admits, like, yeah, it doesn't control the way you want it to control. But like the way they see it, it's not necessarily, you could argue whether or not that's what the game designers intended. But like the way they see it is they enjoy like having to sort of think, because like, you've got like those slow movements, you kind of have to plan ahead of what you're going to do. You've got your committed jump arcs and such. And they enjoy sort of like that sort of methodically going through it instead of the more, I don't want to say twitch because that seems like a little too much, but like the sort of like react as you're going along sort of style.
Yeah, that instead of being like an action game, it's okay, this, Medusa head is flying at me. When it hits this point, I need to hit the button so that I know 4 frames later, he's finally going to have the whip out. And it's going to fly into the whip that's sitting there that I'm waiting for him to be able to move from. But like, you can plan around that because it's going to take that long. And you can sort of set up, this is when I'm going to jump, this is when I'm going to hit the button.
But that's like
a strategy game more than it is an action game.
Yeah. And
that's like but that's also like a very particular play style that you're kind of locked into.
Yeah.
You kind of have to play the game on those terms. And if you're not fond of those terms, then you don't have a lot of fun. I think that's the general consensus, even with people who like the game. It's like, yeah, if the fact that it controls weird is off-putting rather than like sort of like a challenge, the challenge that you need to overcome is just sort of off-putting, then you're not going to have a good time. And that's just like comes down to personal preference, I think.
One game that I didn't think I was going to like as much as I do is Mass Effect, because I do not do first-person shooters at all. I am terrible at them. And the combat controls really are built around that first-person shooter style. So I went in thinking, okay, I'm going to love the world, and I'd love to watch somebody play it, but I am going to utterly fail at this. And I find I've been doing much better than I ever anticipated I would with the game, and I've actually been able to overcome every challenge by myself. So it's been kind of an ego boost to play it and say, hey, I can play something that requires taking cover behind things and being strategic about firing a gun and not get pwned in the first round.
I think I had, like, that reminds me of when I first played Gradius 3, or Gradius, depending on your regional dialect. But I had never been a huge fan of shmups, like side-scrolling space shmups. I had played like UN Squadron and like a few other things, and I would always just die in the first few levels because I always want to kill everything, and if I don't get to, I'll just be putting myself in such a position that I'm just going to die. So I was never good enough to be able to complete a game. But then when I don't know why, I just sat down, I was like, I'm going to try something that I've never really done before. I was like, Gradius 3, this looks good. I've never been into shmups, let's try this. And after I was able to get over that concept of like, I need to kill everything, I just sort of played it as it came. I was like, actually, this is pretty fun. Like, I can see why people would like this.
Yeah, that was something that surprised me about it. So when I played the original Gradius Grodius?
Crystalis.
The original shmup. It was very difficult. I had to rely on Game Genie to get anywhere. But it was so much fun just because of all of the things that you were able to do, all of the ways you could approach it, the different alignment of weapons that you might have, lineup of weapons that you might have, just so many cool enemies and all of these different things. And I go into Gradius 2, and I'm looking at the pretty backgrounds, and it's got awesome music, really, really good soundtrack. And the controls feel just as good as the last one, if not a little bit better. You've got more options, different kind of weapons to play with, new enemies. It's starting to scroll all over the place. It's not just horizontal. You're doing vertical, and it's really neat. I'm like, wow, this is just taking everything I liked about the first game, and it's stepping it up a notch. But I'm still awful at it. I am so bad at this game. And I kept scaling it back a difficulty level until I was at, I think, the lowest one, or maybe the second lowest one. And it was kicking my butt, but I loved it because it was offering so many different ways to play the game. And there were only a couple that would let you survive. But if you messed up, it was usually your own fault. They weren't pulling any kind of shenanigans like, oh, you didn't see that one coming, ha ha ha. It's like, no, you're just not fast enough on the trigger finger here, or you haven't quite figured out where the boss is going to shoot yet. And I think that's what the older Castlevania games are missing for me, because those are almost pure memorization. And it's there's a line between pattern recognition and memorization. Whereas with Gradius, there's a couple parts where you have to do it really perfectly, but you've got some leeway. And I was really enjoying losing terribly because everything else about the game was just pure fun.
I guess if I want to throw in my 2 cents. For one thing, I'm very glad that I recently, updated my backloggery that I hadn't touched in, a year. Because, for this particular podcast, it's have I ever played a game that's, that has this quality for me? Why don't I just look at this list of pretty much every game I've ever played? Until I find something. And this is the closest thing I can find, but... So if you bought a 3DS when it first came out, you got automatically put into the Ambassador program, which gave you 20 free games, 10 NES games, 10 Game Boy games. So it sort of supersedes that. If you didn't think you'd like it, why would you have bought it in the first place, sort of thing. So, because I just had all these games. And for the most part, most of them sort of lived up to my expectations of whether I thought they'd be good or not. But one that I thought I didn't think it necessarily was going to be bad, as I thought it was just going to be kind of meh, was WarioWare Mega Micro Games. Micro Games spelled with a $sign, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to be okay, this is going to be a little dumb, but whatever, it should be a fun time waster. But I got into it, I was playing. Because, you've got, if you're unfamiliar, the start of the style of the game is you have a mini game, but it's very simple. All the controls at most would use the D-pad and the A button, and some games will just use one. Will just use the A, you'll just press the A button at the correct time, and they're all you have to do them in 5 seconds at most, and you go through them and you try to complete a certain number of them as they sort of ramp up in difficulty as you keep going, and it was really addicting. You just sort of you wanted to get better at these really simple games that kept firing off faster and faster and faster. And I found myself going back, and because at first you just go through to play it, to complete it, and I found myself after doing that still going back and just playing the endless mode just for fun, because it was just enjoyable, and I did not expect it to be as fun as it ended up being for me.
So am I the only one who's having this problem nowadays, is that video games are supposed to be fun, they are supposed to be enjoyable, that this is my relaxation of choice, yet most of the stuff I play anymore just frustrates me, or is tedious, or just does something that kind of is counterproductive when I'm trying to relax.
New games?
Games that I haven't played, because since joining the backloggery and having my entire backlog in front of me and saying, oh, I kind of got to play these games that I keep collecting and never getting around to. Since joining several years ago, I've almost stopped replaying games that I've played. So, because it used to be make an annual Chrono Trigger playing. I would play the couple of first-person shooters that I had, like Star Trek Voyager Elite Force, No One Lives Forever, the Jedi Knight games. And so I would play those about once a year, once every 2 years. And I'd love it. It'd be great. And it would always be fun and relaxing. And there's still new ways to play them. I'd do an annual or twice every 2 years Mega Man marathon of some sort. It was great. And then that mostly stopped because I said, look at all these games. I need to start playing them. And I've started to make some decent progress on my backlog, but for every one game that I love, there's 2 games that I like, and then 10 games that I'm like, I'll play this till it's done. And I just keep running into this issue. And it's not any particular era of games. I'm playing old NES games, I'm playing Super Nintendo, I'm playing Game Boy Advance, I'm playing DS, I'm playing Wii U. Well, not Wii U yet. I have a Wii U now. But playing Wii games, I'm playing PC games from all different eras. So all different eras, all different platforms, and across the board, I keep finding games that are bothering me, annoying me, frustrating me. And that's the entire reason why I started the Lost Art of Good Game Design column, because it was originally supposed to be a single blog post of, here are 10 games that I've played recently, like in the last 2 months, here are 10 games that I've played that have had some serious design flaw with them. And I was going to do just a quick little paragraph blurb about each of them, and I realized I can't be concise, so I stretched it out into a whole column. This is a recurring thing, and I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if anybody else is running into this kind of problem.
Well, I think a large part of it is just being an adult and being able to recognize these things, whereas, again, looking back at, Final Fantasy Legend, I just put up with it back then, and now I can look at it, objectively, I guess, and just say, these are the reasons it was bad, and if they could just fix even one of them, it would be an acceptable game. And I don't know, I guess it's not something new. I think it's just something that as, conscious adults occur to you now, And
another thing would be sometimes you play a game when you were younger and then you play it again and you don't have as much fun. It wasn't as fun as you remember because as a kid you were just kind of willing to ignore the bad parts just to get to the good parts. But I think some other times it's because you played it as a kid and ignored sort of the bad early parts of learning what you had to do and learning how the game worked, which could have been really frustrating. Now that you come back, you're still familiar with it to the point where you've learned to work around the bad to the point where you've forgotten that it wasn't to sort of go back to Mario Galaxy. I don't remember, I played that game when it came out, which was 2007.
Yeah.
I think. So 8 years ago. And so I don't, I remember playing it. We got it for Christmas, so I remember, sitting down and just playing it. But I don't remember what I thought of it while I was playing it. I just remember playing it. And now when I play it, I have a lot of fun. But, 8 years ago, I was 11. And maybe the weird gravity stuff was really frustrating at first, but then I got my head wrapped around it. And now when I go back and play it, I've got my head sort of wrapped around how all the gravity stuff works. And so I have a good time. But if I hadn't played it before and got to it now, would that same sort of, dealing with the weird gravity sections, would it be I don't get this and just sort of give up on it? Because I just don't remember. That's just an example. There are other games where it's would I like this as much if I hadn't played it as a kid first and gotten used to the bad things, not just because nostalgia?
Well, that's, I think about Crystallis, and as we saw in our End Day at the Races video, where everybody
Yes.
competitively tried to get to the statue first, there's a lot of things that if you've never played the game before and aren't using a walkthrough, that aren't very intuitive. And I attribute it to it being an early action RPG, where it was trying to throw in some puzzle elements, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I definitely remember being stuck outside the first town for a long time when I first played the game. That's another one that my dad and I sat down and started to play through together. And, I'm looking around at the windmill, and I'm I know I can do something with the windmill. And I, like everybody else, tried to stab the keyhole to make the windmill work, and it just didn't work.
Yes.
But eventually I started to figure it out, and this was long before the days of game FAQs and Prima strategy guides and all of that. So I had to figure this all out for myself. Game Genie was very helpful in keeping me alive long enough to figure out, oh wait, this boss is invincible right now, I wonder why that is. But little by little I pieced it together, and even though I was frustrated with some of what was going on, and I knew that there was just this big stumbling block in front of me, I was still fascinated enough by the game that I kept going. I was still interested and intrigued. I liked the gameplay. I liked the mechanics. I liked the potential of where it had to go, that I said, okay, this particular part is bugging me, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to see what happens. And I think part of my problem as well is as I'm getting older, I have less patience because I don't have nearly as much time to play video games, so I want to make it count.
Yeah.
And I've seen so much, I've played so much, that it takes a very special game to really capture my imagination, grab my attention, and get me interested long enough to overlook any of the problematic gameplay elements. until I get past them.
Yeah, like back when, number one, you only had maybe 50 games to choose from, and you didn't really have your own income, so spending another, $30, $40 or whatever.
50, 60.
Well, I guess I think of like buying a used NES game during the SNES era or something. But like being able to save up your, allowance and go buy another game, you just played the ones that you had. Like that was what you had available, so even though you hated it, you continued to try to play. And I've, like, going and playing some of these games again, I realize I was only on the first couple of stages. I never progressed through a lot of these games that I played. Blaster Master, I have so many memories of the first few areas, and not so much of any of the rest. I don't think I ever beat the game. But I think of it fondly, and yeah, it's definitely true that things are different now that we have this, incredible, ridiculous assortment of games that are, choosing that anywhere from free to as expensive as we like. So it's not really worth pushing through a game that's even moderately bad in any respect. We can go find something else.
I have started to become more discerning. I am finally starting to look at games and throw them out. Maybe not physically throw them out, but just say, nope, not playing this one anymore.
Yeah.
Well, and with the sheer number of games, I mean, you look at Steam, there are thousands of roguelikes alone just out there of not only the big studios going, hey, this one game at one time was super popular, let's make 1 million copies of that, but with half the budget and in 20 minutes to produce the whole thing. But then you also have the at-home game studios where people are creating tributes to their favorite games and then releasing them for $1. Or, creating their own version of a game that they always wanted to make. And it may or may not be good. And there are some great ones out there. But then for every one great game, you've got 10 meh games and 20, why did you even bother releasing this and why did I pay 50 cents for it?
Yeah.
So there's just too much out there, and the market has become so flooded that quality has just gone down the tubes. And then with the newer games, you've got the mentality of, we have this technology, therefore we must use this technology. So with every new system that comes out, it's, we have gyroscopic technology, we must use it. We have VR technology, we must use it. Everything new that comes out, people feel compelled to incorporate into the game, whether it would enhance the game or not. So you have a lot of things that would be great games if they hadn't tried overly hard to make them gimmicky.
Yeah. Actually, going back to roguelikes, it's something that I could see myself wasting a lot of time on if I let myself, but it bugs me so much that there are so many of them, and since they're all randomly generated, you're never going to beat them. So like there is no beating, you're just going to keep playing. So which one do I pick to play infinitely? And then it just becomes, in my opinion, well, then I'm not going to play any of them. Like if there's no point to, as much fun as it might be, I'm not going to play 5 minutes of every one. And if I'm only playing one, then I'm missing out. So I have trouble with roguelikes. Like there are parts of it that appeal to me, but I can't allow myself to get into it.
I've kind of found that with sandbox games. I used to love SimCity 2000. I used to love using the map editors for Civilization 3 and other games that anything that had a map editor, I was all over that. Heroes of Might and Magic 3, anything with a 3 in it, really. And I loved making maps, creating things. I'd sit down, I'd play through them with my sister, play through them with my friends, and just test it out. And I loved doing that. And then I started to get, like I said, I joined the backloggery and started looking at my collection and saying I need to play through more of these. And I started getting out of that mindset of, here's a fun thing to do. Let's just use it as a playground for a while. And I've gotten more into, I need to beat this game. I need to see the ending. I need to accomplish it. So it's sort of been a double-edged sword that I'm being motivated to play the games that I'm buying, but I'm also overlooking some of the ones where I can just sit there and linger on them for a while. I tried playing Galactic Civilizations 2, and it's sort of in the same vein as Master of Orion. It's space and building an empire in space and building ships and fighting things and doing missions. And I kind of liked it. it has a sense of humor, and it seemed to have a pretty decently streamlined interface. And I was trying to do one of the missions so that I had that sort of built-in tutorial mode, as it was keeping things very limited. And I played it for a session, and then I stopped playing and just never had the motivation to go back to it. And it's not that it's a bad game, but I was thinking, well, if I want something like this, I'll just play Master of Orion. I don't need to learn how to play it.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just so much time that goes into that sandboxy thing. And maybe that's where the pure fun of video gaming is just hopping into the sandbox and playing. But at the same time, there's part of me that wants to accomplish something, and I feel good when I accomplish things, and that's what's driving me. So, I don't know, I've sort of lost that momentum for being able to just create things and sandbox things for a while, which is why it was a nice change of pace. I've been playing through Mega Man Powered Up for the PSP, which is a remake of the original Mega Man for the NES, and the target of my next Lost Art of Good Game Design column after I'm done with the one about East. That's almost done. But there's a level editor. And you would think that this would be the first thing that I'd jump on, because if Capcom can't make a decent Mega Man game, surely I can, right? So I sat down and I started to play with it. I'm like, the controls are a little awkward because you have to use both the circle pad and the touch pad to maneuver more than you use the buttons, which is just confusing to me. But I had a decent amount of freedom to do what I wanted, and I started piecing together a level. I need to go back and finish it up, but it was just fun. I wasn't playing anything. I wasn't accomplishing anything. I was just tinkering and seeing what was possible, and it was some of the most fun that I've had with a video game for quite a while.
I think that's where I'm at with Mountain, because I've been playing Mountain recently, which isn't so much playing as much as an experience. And I've been having so much fun just letting the game be and not needing to force myself to get an achievement or do any of these crazy things that the modern games want you to do.
It's just caretaking a mountain.
It's a landscape simulator. But just to return to that simple joy of letting a game be, which I think we've gotten away from.
I think it's also interesting because aren't they releasing, what is essentially just a Mario level editor, as a standalone game?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's called Mario Maker.
Nice.
I heard about that, actually.
They talked about it, I think, at the last E3. It says scheduled for release in September of this year. So not too far off. So it's basically just a level editor for the Wii U. And one of the interesting things, I think, is that it lets you switch between graphical styles too. So you can make a Mario 1 stage, but then you can press a button and it just turns into something like New Super Mario Brothers style graphics or Super Mario World graphics. But I think it's just a level editor. I mean, maybe it'll come with some demo levels that you can play or some challenges or something. But as far as marketing goes, it's just a level editor.
I mean, I hope you can play the levels that you...
Well, yes. Well, as part of the level editor, you get to play them.
You can just look at them. Nobody can play this.
But I think that's an interesting thing. And then, other stuff like Mega Man fan games, I feel kind of recently have had a sort of a resurgence in popularity. Maybe it's because of that officially supported Street Fighter versus Mega Man thing, but
Well, I think it's because of all of the press that the Mega Pony video that Shannon and I did for the GameCola YouTube channel. I think that's really driving it.
We started a renaissance.
Yeah, that and the Ho-Ho Holiday livecast extravaganza.
Oh, yes.
Played the Mega Man
Christmas Carol.
Yes.
That's definitely one. That's Mega Man, the NES Mega Man at least. It seemed I've played so many different ones, and it's just it seems really conducive to sort of, not because it's not strictly level editor, because one of the other interesting things is that you get all these different takes on what people think would be fun weapons. But it's very
being the operative word.
Yeah. But I've played so many different ones where aside from adding in new weapons and bosses, it just seems like they took a level editor and made a stage. And you've got the consistent Mega Man always, you've got the jump and shoot. And then if you want, you can throw in the slide and charge. But it's very consistent, very you can make this jump. Can Mega Man make this jump? Then it's a level you can do. But, like, there's just been, like, it's simple enough that the people just making the fan games have been throwing lots of cool little twists. Like, there was one I played I think it was called, like, Rockman 5 Air Slide, where in addition to just being a regular Mega Man fan game, you had the ability to slide in midair. That was
like
fun.
an air dash, yeah.
Yeah, like an air dash.
But you're sliding.
But you're like, you did the slide animation. And, like, some of them that are just, like, they're not even Mega Man fan games. They were fan games of specific Mega Man games. Like, there's Rockman 4 MI. I don't know what MI stands for. But it's like,
Mission
Minus
Impossible.
Infinity, that's right. I haven't played it.
It's
I
the
played it before
abbreviation
it was
for mile.
finished. Yeah. But, like, it looks like just a retooled Mega Man 4. Like, you know, it's like someone took the little squares of graphics and just moved them. And then, like, the Rockman 5 Air Slide is all using assets from Mega Man 5. Like, you know, there's a Gravity Man stage. I think you actually do fight, like, the actual just robot masters from the game. You get different weapons. But, like, you know, there's Gravity Man. You've got, like, these parts where you're, like, falling down sections where you have to air slide into a place where it will flip you over, and then you go flying back up towards the top, trying not to hit spikes. And it's just, like, I was seeing Mario Maker, and I was like, I wish they would do that for Mega Man. And then I remembered that they were gonna, kinda.
But they weren't gonna do it well, from what I saw, because that was Mega Man Universe. And it was a weird mobile game graphics style with Mega Man 2 only, basically, from what I saw. I mean, it was early enough that who knows what it could have turned into, but
You say Mega Man 2 only? You mean, like, only Mega Man 2 assets? Like,
yeah, everything that I saw about that game was Mega Man 2. Hey, he's using Leaf Shield. Hey, there's tellies coming out of the holes in the wall. Hey, there's, you know, Heat Man. Maybe Heat Man wasn't in there specifically, but it was all Mega Man 2 stuff.
I don't remember that specifically, but that wouldn't surprise me. People like Mega Man 2. That's kind of the end of that. What were we originally talking about? We went off on a weird digression there.
Bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah, bananas.
Like, the thing is that we started with games that you could fix by changing one thing, and then it evolved, like, 3 separate times into slightly different topics.
Which is okay.
But actually, we have 2 GameCola fan mails.
Oh, we got email.
Yes. We got that email.
Time to check the email.
Wait, but actually, we have 2 GameCola fan mails.
Oh, we got email.
Yes, we got that email.
Time to check the email.
Wait, I'm completely blanking on Blue's Clues.
What? Oh, mail time.
Yeah.
Mail time. I don't know how
Mail time. Mail time. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me wanna wag my tail. When it comes, I wanna wail. Mail.
Yep.
I watched a lot of Blue's Clues.
I was a little too old for it, so it's not quite as ingrained in me.
It is so ingrained in my mind. I tweeted about this, but, like, while Jeddy's pulling up the emails or whatever, there's a character, and his name is Side Table Drawer. That's his name.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's a regularly occurring character. Like, there were episodes, like, about him, and he, like, did things. But, like,
I love Blue's
every
Clues.
single time they called him, like, he didn't have a nickname. His name was just Side Table Drawer. Not Side Table. He was specifically the drawer. He could move, but he was named after specifically the drawer.
See the things we miss out on by being old, Nathaniel.
I'll never get over that. I just accepted that as a child.
Yeah.
Side table drawer. Hello, side table drawer. Do you have the thing I want? Well, yes, I am a drawer, and you put the thing in me, so I suppose.
We were doing really well. We were focused on video games for such a long time.
Okay. So we've got 2...
We got fan mail.
Yeah, 2 emails.
There are Blue's Clues video games, though. I'll say that.
Nice try.
Fan mail. I'm sorry.
Okay, so email number 1. Whoa. Hey podcasters, how's it going? 1. How much money does GameCola have and what does it spend its money on? Actually, sorry, I misread that. It's GameCola. GameCola.
How does it spell?
GameCola. GAMEC, capital COLA.
Oh, okay. So there's okay.
Yeah, GameCola.
He was trying to CC someone on the email, and it just got messed up.
Yeah, the autocorrect. But okay.
Should we answer that question?
Not a lot, and server fees.
Was like.
Is that what you call the Feed Paul donation fund?
Number 2. For the 100th podcast, are you going to do something as big as the 50th with a lot of fan involvement and stuff? And we have about a year now. This is podcast number 85. We've got to start planning for our big 100. We have discussed it before.
Mm-hmm. We discussed it on the podcast that was like 2 years before the 100th podcast, I think.
Yeah, I think that's when we started discussing it. But yeah, I don't know. We have it's in mind. We don't have any specific plans as of yet, but we probably should start our plans for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was also realizing we should probably start now for this year's the end day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've got like 3-4 months.
Is it real? Wait,
It was this past year that we did the race.
Oh wow, it does not feel.
I know what we should do. I have a recommendation, a suggestion.
What's that?
I think we should all let our artistic sides run amok and have everybody contribute fan art of Crystallis of some portion, small or large, and throw them together and see what happens.
Let's do it.
Okay.
We could have a be careful what you search for in there.
Well, see, I was just thinking if we could tell the story of Crystallis one at a time.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean one at a time?
We each send in like a 2-minute video of us explaining what the plot is.
Yeah,
And
so
then
like
string them together.
Yeah.
So Anna would say, well, you start off in a cave and then you scare a guy.
And you scare a guy.
Like
He's just like, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to run away from you.
Didn't mean to blow up your wall, man. Sorry.
the next person would say something about like, well, then I tried to stab a windmill. I didn't get past that puzzle. I don't know. And then the third person would say, I didn't get this far.
Just have a series of staff members saying, I don't know what happens next. I didn't make it that far. I actually gave up 2 towns before.
Yeah, I think
How
somebody
many of
else
us have actually finished it. I know Nathaniel and I have.
Yeah, I have.
Good Jeddy.
I think we should all watch a walkthrough of it. And then
Anyone who was on the actual commentary of the race, I think, had completed it, right?
Not
Is that how it went?
necessarily.
I don't
No?
know.
Well, there are a lot of people who went in playing that blind.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. The people who were on the commentary were people who had played it because they couldn't, because the whole point was that you were supposed to play it blind. And then, so the people who played it weren't the people who commentated on it.
Yeah,
Oh, right, yes. I was there.
I was there, but I can't remember. I feel like there was a third person, and I don't know who it was.
Matt Jonas.
Oh, that's right, because he made the video. He did a really good job at that.
Yeah,
Like,
he
it
did.
was far more than I was expecting. Actually, when I hired half of the new staff, most of them, they said they would be really excited to be in this year's race, Crystallis race. And I was like, well, I don't know if we're doing that. Should we do it 2 years in a row? I kind of feel like we should at least take a year break.
Well, if we did it, we wouldn't start from scratch. We might start, circulate a save state of them at the statue, and then go from there and set another milestone, and then, in another 10 years, we'll get to the end of the game.
Yeah. Or just start them when you reach the tower.
Near the end of the game.
Yeah, at the end of the game, just place them there. They've never played the rest of the game. Just, you're there, beat the game. Tell us what you think about the ending.
how long does it take to get through the final section if you know what you're doing?
If you know what you're doing, if you do or you don't know what you're doing, it's really about the same amount of time because it's mostly just fighting endless legions of enemies until they all go away.
And then being confused about where the staircase is. And then the end boss is ridiculously easy.
Well, if you're using your magic properly, yes. Otherwise, it's like ah.
But sorry, we were actually talking about the 100th podcast. We'll think about it. We'll make a plan. It'll probably be 2 months before it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So number 3, has anyone read Vulgarity for the Masses? Which, for those who don't know, is Mateo's book that he wrote.
I have not.
Yeah, I haven't.
Sorry.
I looked it up on Amazon.
Yeah, I did see it on Amazon, after reading the email. I guess I feel like I probably should. I mean, I can't say that I'm not curious about it.
I haven't sat, and this might just be me, but I haven't sat down and read a book since I think maybe high schoolish. I've started to, but I haven't finished one in a while. Because after, you get into high school and college, and it's you need to do this reading. And it gets to a certain point where I'm reading, and reading for fun is I feel like I'm supposed to be taking notes or
For me, the problem is if I get a hard copy of a book, I can't, I can read a book if it's on the computer. But if I have to get off of the computer and sit somewhere else and do it, I can't dedicate more than 15 minutes without being well, I'm supposed to be doing something.
I have the opposite problem, actually. I can't, sit on the computer and read. I don't know why.
I guess that is strange, is that you would think I would be too distracted on the computer. But I guess the thing is that I can take a break, and I can be oh, I need to write down this idea for the program I'm doing. And I just, tab over, tick, 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 and then I'm done, and then I go back to reading. Whereas if I'm, off in another room reading, I'll be oh no, wait, is there a pencil and paper somewhere where I can write this down? And I'm just whatever, I'm done with this, I'm going back at the computer. But yes, for those who don't know, GameCola's own Mateo Javier has written a book, Vulgarity for the Masses. Give it a look. Number 4. I know this is a stretch, but what happened to the debate cast? Which actually...
To the what cast?
The debate cast. And I do believe that the what is the appropriate answer here.
Okay, I said the what because the audio glitched out when he said it, so I just heard the cast. I was but no, yeah, I remember the emphasis. I think on singular.
There's only one
debate cast.
Can I tell you that it bothers me so much as the organized person that I am and as the YouTube administrator for GC.net that we have this one numbered podcast that has no sequel or prequel. It's just the GameCola Debate Cast number one. I'm what the heck playlist do I put this in? Where do you belong?
Well, we need to make a number 2, and then it can have its own little section.
Yeah, but who needs a playlist with just 2 videos in it? I demand 3.
Okay, organize them.
Oh, that's work.
I remember at the time, there was a point where, because who originally came up with it?
That was Christian and Stu and Matt, and I think it was just the 3 of them. There might have been one other person.
The tags list Mark Friedman. I think the concept, though, came from Christian Porter, if that's what you're asking.
And I think it was going to be his thing, and then he
immediately
went to
quit.
Yeah. And so someone else had to pick it up, but it's one of those things where it's because you had to have the way it was structured, you were supposed to have a mediator.
Yeah.
But it's how do you you only wanted to suggest things that you wanted to talk speaking personally. I only I was thinking of suggestions, but they were all things that I wanted to talk about. So I was I don't know what an interesting thing to talk about is that I'm not interested in having an opinion enough on it to be a mediator.
Yeah.
Because I'd always want to add my 2 cents in.
Yeah. I don't know. I know that the concept got tossed around for a while, but nobody's taken the reins of sorts.
The debate cast happened before Hacks and Slash and the first RPG cast, didn't it?
I'm pretty sure it did, yeah.
And so now we've sort of got, those are like, even those are like, we have to,
It's difficult to get those going.
Yeah, so like going back in and throwing in this sort of fourth one, like it's the debate cast, like that's gonna be, it writes itself sort of. Like, so I feel like it's one of those ideas that we're reluctant to throw away because it's like to give up on completely, because it's like, get a bunch of people, have them debate something. Like, that's, compared to the other two podcasts we have, that's incredibly simple. You just need to have a couple people who have an opinion on a thing.
But somebody needs to own it.
Yeah,
right.
And that's the...
And I don't know if there's people who are ready to own it, because otherwise it's a little... Because like for the other ones, it's like, the idea is you run it if you have the thing. If you have the fan fiction that we're going to do, that means you're in charge. If you have worked out the RPG that we're going to do, you're the one in charge. With the debate cast, there's less of a...
Yeah, are you going to be one of the debaters? Are you going to be the moderator?
Like, yeah, can a debater be the one in charge of the cast? Does it have to be the moderator? It's something that we could make work. I think it's just one of those things that sort of fallen to the wayside as we've, especially with the other podcasts coming into play.
Although, a slight aside, speaking of owning it and, who runs the whatever, we recently did have Mark Friedman left Q&A Cola after quite a run of running that column. I feel like it's a GameCola favorite. Like, it is something that's been a long-running, once-a-month column.
Oh, and it's a great way to keep the staff involved.
Yeah.
And to keep the staff mutually involved, not just I wrote an article, threw it in the hopper, and walked away. That it's people gathering together and actively reading each other's stuff because you're all interested in the same topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But, obviously, there's only so long that you can really be doing the exact same format over and over. So he decided he wanted to move on to do some other things, and Jeff Nemeth has taken over, which I think it hasn't been published yet, but I've scheduled
all accounts, the prep work for it went very well.
Yeah, like I guess I'm just so used to whenever we have a change of hands that things go horribly wrong and we never hear from it again. So I was quite pleasantly surprised that it immediately picked right back up, and it's already scheduled for Friday, which will be after recording.
Posted
before.
Yeah, you'll read it before you hear this.
Yeah, if you're looking at GameCola.net, Gaming Outside the Mainstream, and or it's Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah, that's right, because we need to specify, because this podcast could show up in many places.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Along those lines, and I know we're getting away from the email that we were reading, I just want to say I'm really pleased with the amount of content we've had on the YouTube channel. I've been able to post things every other day or every 3 days for a couple of months now.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've been creating videos for all of our old podcasts that never made it onto YouTube. And that's been very gradually working its way up. We did our family game night. We recorded a game. Jeff also hosted, I don't know how to pronounce it right. Shannon, help me out. The
Atelier Rona Plus, I think was the name of it.
Yeah, that one. So we recorded that, and that's sitting out in cyberspace somewhere that needs to get
Yeah, he had a
processed.
glitch with his saved game, so he needs to kind of start over. So that one's in the hopper, but not published.
Right. So we had that, and the, what is it? I think it was the Operation Titanic podcast. Michael had posted some of the Nancy Drew RPG cast videos, and so those started to go up as well. And I was looking through, so in order to put up the new podcast videos that are single segment, that have the whole podcast all in one video, I wanted to take down the couple of old ones like podcast 13, 14, 15, the ones that we had in multiple parts, and so that, we could just replace those with the new ones. And in doing so, I said, I want to make sure I don't mess this up. I'm going to just make you all private, and then I'm going to go and look at all of my private videos and just delete those, because there really shouldn't be more than one or two. Oh, and also the Zero Escape videos that are starting to come back again. I'm seeing some of the video portion sitting there waiting for commentary. So lots of stuff going on. But I made them all private, and so I go in and look at the private videos, just sort by private videos. And I'm like, okay, 1 or 2 Zero Escape videos that we haven't done yet. And okay, here's all my podcast videos, and Phoenix Wright, Part 6. Phoenix Wright, Part 7. Phoenix Wright, Part 8. And I fire them up, and I start playing them, and there's video, and there's commentary. These are complete videos. And I'm looking at the upload date, and it's August 2014.
That's why they weren't out the... Oh, okay. Because I was thinking... I was like, this kid...
Somebody
recorded this like a year ago.
I know, and I emailed Diana. I said, hi, I just noticed a bunch of Phoenix Wright videos. Is there a reason that we haven't posted them yet? And she basically thought that we were waiting on them for some reason. Like, I think she wanted to put them together in a block and release them at once when she had more of the recording done, or I just forgot about them. So, these are finally making their way onto YouTube.
No, I definitely, occasionally I'll remember when I'm doing, the social media posts, oh yeah, I should post the YouTube videos. But, like, I don't pay enough attention, like, I never go on YouTube. So it's not, like, in my realm of vision to think I need to check the GameCola YouTube today, see if there was anything I should post about. But anyway, actually, there's a 5th part to this email, and then there's a 2nd email.
Let's do it.
Okay, so, anyway, getting back to the email, number 5. What is your, to everyone on the podcast, favorite GameCola podcast episode?
I don't know.
This is actually a Q&A Cola question that I submitted a couple weeks back. So we get a head start on it.
I was going to say, I don't know, podcast 333, the threes or whatever.
I guess my pre-question before we all answer this is, how many podcasts have we all listened to?
The thing is that, like, I'm pretty sure I've listened to all of them, but that's to say that, I listened to number 1 5 years ago or whatever. Like,
and we're talking about the GameCola Podcast, the monthly.
They don't exactly specify, but, I mean, if you do, it starts to get a little, I would probably say Crystalis RPG Cast is always a classic. Some of these, the Nancy Drew Super Mystery podcasts are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Any Hacks and Slash, the Metroid High School, always a classic.
Mm-hmm.
That one was fantastic. Although, I do have to say that the one that came out before it, the Mario-themed Hacks and Slash, I listened to that before I was ever part of the recording crew for Hacks and Slash, and that podcast made me want to be part of Hacks and Slash. I wasn't even supposed to be in the room listening to it, and just overheard it when "What is this?" came into the room where Nathaniel was listening to it, and couldn't leave because it was so funny.
Which one was it again? Sorry,
Journey of Love and Sadness. Right?
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I remember listening to that first one. I was like, I am so sad that I was not a part of that one.
I know, it's
like,
so beautiful.
And it was like, I have to be on like every single one after this. I just have to. I don't think I did.
Listening to that, oh my god, I was dying and I couldn't laugh out loud. It was terrible. But yeah, I like any Hacks and Slash and any RPG cast. Those are all good. And I like the one that we did where it was Jeddy and the college kids. And I think it was mostly because I was extremely hyper.
See, I have trouble because, like, you would think I would have more attachment to podcasts when I'm both involved and then I get to edit them. That I would have more, like, specific memories of, oh yeah, that was a really good podcast. But because I'm so involved and because I have to listen to it as content and not, like, I don't just get to sit and listen and be like, oh, that was funny. I have to plan it, I have to edit it, I have to go back and listen to these 8 words 12 times because I'm trying to cut out, some technical error or something while still making it understandable, that it loses meaning to me, Like, I'm listening to it as words instead of as the podcast.
I've also had the thing, like, with Hacks and Slash in particular, where, like, if something, like, I feel like when I'm on the podcast and someone else is in charge of it, like, if something goes wrong, like, we can all have a good laugh about it.
Yeah.
But then, like, if you're the one in charge and something goes wrong, you're always kind of like, this is my fault. I should have done something. Like, as an example, alphabetical order. Like, that, from what I could tell, everyone thinks that's really funny. But, like, at the time, I was very like, what have I done? I felt like, because like, and I also forgot to tell people to say their parts, and so I put it in a blooper reel so we can hear it now. But like, just at the time, I was like, what have I done?
Yeah.
I felt responsible.
I tried so hard and got so far.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, it didn't even matter.
Well, that was the third episode of the Final Fantasy RPG cast
Oh,
that did not record.
Yeah.
We had an entire, 2 hours worth of game?
That was like 2 hours.
That was unaccounted for. But we still made it work. It wasn't ideal, but it ended up being surprisingly entertaining. It worked out really well, having everybody write from the perspective of the characters they were playing in their respective journals. And it looks weird when you watch it on the YouTube channel because you've got 2 podcast videos of the actual story, and then one that was the training session that Joe and I did separately just because we needed something for part 3, and then a very elaborate video description of, you're going to be confused if you don't read this, so please read this. And then back to our regularly scheduled program.
I forgot about that. I want to go look and see what I wrote. I'll do it after the podcast. I forgot.
I remember reading that, and everyone else wrote something pretty cool, and then there was me, and I just put like the straight thing. Like,
but
this is what happened.
You need to have the more serious balance to it, so that you've got some sort of communication of what actually happened.
Yeah.
One person has to play it straight, otherwise you don't know what happened.
Right.
You're welcome.
For the question itself, if we want to go with the GameCola Podcast, I think, and it's kind of hard because I will go back and listen to not old game. I don't usually go further back than when I got on staff, but I will go back and whatever's on my podcast app, I'll go near the beginning and see which one of those that comes up. And some of the ones that I like are, I think they're number 70 and number 72, which number 70 has, I think, the first time Paul and I argued about Cheez-Its versus Cheese Nips.
And then that after that came a year of me just going to Walmart and seeing those and just taking pictures and mentioning the two of you in tweets, just being like, hey guys, look.
Yeah. And then 72 has Sparky Pine versus Forky Pine.
Yeah.
Which I think also re-brings, I think, was Paul in that one? No, he wasn't. Okay. But yeah, that's just another one where it was just, looking at the show notes, I feel like the last third of, no, it's like half of the podcast. It seems like half of a little bit less than half of the show notes are about Sparky Pine versus Forky Pine.
It's so weird though, is looking at the list, I'm only on page 2 and I'm scrolling down, I'm like, man, that horrible box art Mega Man cosplay. That was a while ago, wasn't it? It feels like it shouldn't be on page 2 and it's literally from 2 years ago. I'm just sitting here going, wow,
right?
Yeah. Monthly podcasts.
The two podcasts that I just mentioned are over a year old.
Yeah, and it's the weirdest thing because they feel again, I have to deal with them, a week or so beforehand, and then I have to deal with them for another week after recording as I'm editing it, and then I publish it. So there's this extended thing for me that the podcasts sort of flow together, and I never feel very far away from the last one. So thinking that, there's only 12 podcasts in a year, so 2 pages back, you're already 2 years back. It's just strange how quickly you end up back in time.
And this also, I think, is, at least as far as I know, this is one of the longest running podcasts that I know of.
Well, this was the original podcast.
Right. This is, not just on the
on
site,
the
but
internet
in general.
This was the first time anyone ever used the term podcast. I'm not sure where we came up with that. But no, it is true, like, in terms of straight up years in production, like, this is a very long-running podcast.
And it's been pretty consistent, hasn't it? I mean, I can't remember.
Up until I took over, like, for a while it was pretty good. I think they were doing it twice monthly.
Yeah, well, I'm going back now. Like I said, I'm starting to upload, create backgrounds, which is surprisingly quick and very. I'm getting my accomplishment, self-achievement medal in. Like, hey, I made a background. It took me 45 seconds. Great. And then posting these things to YouTube. So I'm looking at some of the old ones, and I'm making a little note of when the podcast originally aired because some of these are very terribly dated.
Yeah.
But, I'm making a mark, and I'm like, oh, March 2010. March 2010.
Yeah.
March 20... Why are you all... Just spread it out a little, you guys.
Yeah, like there's, like I'm looking at...
2009, I guess, 8.
I'm looking at March 2010 right now, but then there's April 11th, 2010, and April 21st, 2010. Like, why was there only 10 days? February 1st and February 9th. But yeah, like... podcast favorite episode.
If you're looking to go back through and look at some of like getting from the question, if your idea is you want to go and find some good GameCola podcasts to like satiate your appetite to dive into the whole backlog, those are two I would suggest personally.
I guess one thing that, like, talking again about GameCola 4.0, it would be nice if we could sort by score articles by some sort of grouping. So it would be nice if we could go to podcasts or, the tag GameCola Podcast and sort those by score.
Although we'd also need to get our readers to rate our articles more often, because I feel like just doing the math in my head of what you would need to be rated to get a particular score, we have very even numbers. Like, well, we have the 5 that the article comes with by default as the rating, and one person rated it a 6, and one person rated it an 8, so obviously that's how we got this number. And those are the only people who voted. You, me, and the computer. So I think if we had some sort of encouragement for our readers to rate more of our articles, that would really work out. Unfortunately, I don't think we have that many people rating most of the articles.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of visitors who come to the site willingly. It's either, they get the link through Facebook or they end up on Be Careful What You Search For.
Well, even amongst the staff, if every single staff writer rated every article they read, that alone would be enough to give us fractions.
But I always feel biased. Like, I feel like I shouldn't vote because, like, I'm biased. It's dumb. It's a dumb mentality. But
I rate every article that I read, and I read every article. I listen to every podcast. I'm GameCola's unofficial resident historian because I've absorbed almost everything that we have on the site. I think there's a small patch of time around like 2007, I think, that I'm not completely caught up on, but I've basically seen everything. So yeah, I rate every article as I'm editing them now, because I'm going back through the archives very gradually and getting everything pre-relaunch, so pre-January 2010, up to code to meet the standards of our current style guide. And as I edit each one of those articles, I'll rate it on the way out. And I rate my own articles, and I'm not always, it's not like perfect 10, everything I write. I will give myself lower scores if I know that this is just a piece of fluff that needed to get out there because nobody else had written a post for Tuesday.
Yeah.
Shannon, how many of the podcasts have you listened to? Do you have a favorite?
I really only listen to the Hacks and Slash and the RPG Cast. I am not really a podcast listening person. I like being part of recording. I don't generally load audio things and just listen to them. I barely even listen to music on my computer, honestly. I don't generally have audio going in the background.
This is maybe something that, like, is against policy to say. No, it's just silly. But I will sometimes pull up the GameCola podcast when I'm gonna take a nap. And it's not like the podcast is boring, but usually, because it's not that. But it's like, usually it's one that I'm on, so it's one that I know what happens. So it just sort of like sit and like listen to people talk about things. And it's like, I'm not like it's entertaining, but it's not like I'm interested because like I know what is said.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like a nice background noise, and then I'll fall asleep. And then I usually wake up before the podcast ends too, which is always a little weird. Because it's on.
You only sleep for an hour and a half.
I guess. But I'm going through. It looks like in terms of podcast popularity, Hacks and Slash is the only thing that I've come across on. Oh, here, podcast 38.
Well, okay.
Yeah, here we go. Podcast 38, I think, is the highest on YouTube. Is the highest GameCola podcast.
Remind me of the title of that one.
Too Many Podcasters, Part 1.
Right.
Okay, because I was going to say,
Time Machine, I think.
I'm looking at GameCola's top articles page, and in the top articles of all time is Turnabout Musical Interview Part 1, GameCola Podcast 42.
Hold on, let me try something. It's called
Turnabout, one word, musical.
No, that's not on this. Is that it's for number 42?
Yeah.
It's
podcast 42.
It's not. But like, so most popular on YouTube is strictly views.
Okay.
So it's 990 people watch that. Now, if you want to go with all the podcasts, you've got your Hacks and Slash come up before then. The first one is the first. I think it's on like the second page of the most popular videos.
Yeah.
And then the next one is the third one, which is the Phoenix Wright one, which I feel like just sort of appeals to our audience's tastes.
Yeah. In the top rated articles of all time, number 2 is Hacks and Slash. Number 1, Luigi and Daisy's Journey of Love and Sadness. Number 4 is the Chrysalis D&D Cast Part 10, The Final Countdown. 8 is Final Fantasy RPG Cast Part 1, The Best Heroes Breakfast Can Buy. Yeah, and then way down number 8, or I don't know what number I was at. I stopped counting, but it's the number 42.
Just thinking about GameCola 4.0, maybe what you could do is like top-rated articles instead of like having to figure out how to like. And if you can figure out how to do a search function for popularity, that would be cool. But if that proves to be like too weird and whatever, you could do like maybe do a top-rated articles instead of just from past month and of all time, like include the side also including with those like top-rated podcasts, top-rated blog,
by
category.
Yeah.
Reviews, columns, news, blog, comics, submissions, podcasts, videos, just as an example.
Actually, I might be able to just do that now, just add that to the page there. Like that one, I don't think would be too difficult, but making it part of the search function is something that I'd like to do, but we'll see whether it ends up a reality.
So that would be interesting, because I feel like if you're looking for something based on popularity, usually you're looking for the most popular thing rather than the middle popular thing. Or you might be looking for the least popular, which would be interesting, but I don't know if we want to advertise that on the front page of the site.
Like, I think maybe what I might be able to do is add one of those sort by relevance, sort by date, sort by popularity.
Mm-hmm.
Like that I feel like should be a feasible.
But it would be interesting to see the top-rated, like just thinking about like the top-rated podcasts, top-rated video pages.
Yeah.
Top-rated news, top-rated. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. Is that the last question on the email? Did we answer the last question on the email?
Oh, I didn't answer. Quickly, my podcast picks. As for the regular The Podcast, as far as that goes, I'm still partial to our Metroid podcast. I think that one went really well. I enjoyed talking about one of my all-time favorite video game franchises, and that it wasn't derailing anyone's conversation like we were sort of doing with X2 earlier to get down and into the nitty-gritty of a particular series, because that's what the whole podcast was about. So I really like that one. There was another one, When Cowboys Wore Pink, that everybody seems to enjoy. That was a good one. And I have a special, of course, a special place in my heart for the RPG cast. Crystallis being closer because that's one of my all-time favorite games, and I love the group dynamic. I think that worked out really well. I think the Final Fantasy RPG cast was a better executed podcast because I had learned a couple lessons from the first one. The combat generally went better, smoother, I think. We didn't get hung up as much on certain spots. That was still fun. So I enjoyed that one as well. And of course, the hacks and slash. The Metroid High School was just a blast to be a part of, and it's still fun to listen to. The Luigi and Daisy one, I agree, is very good.
Yeah, Metroid High School one was the first podcast type thing that I recorded while I was at college, and my roommates had just arrived that day, so I'm just like, oh great, they're going to think I'm insane. Can't wait.
Yeah, my roommate was in the room when we recorded the Mega Man one, where I was the narrator, so I was doing a lot of talking. And I got a lot of weird looks. Like, I told him what I was doing, so it wasn't like all of a sudden his roommate is saying these weird things about robots.
Just with no response.
But like it was still like I got a couple looks.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly.
Oh, I also have to say the Trumpet Talk podcast was also very entertaining.
Wait, what did we talk about? I mean, trumpets, yes. Which one was that? I'm trying to remember.
Well, was that the one where we talked about the Pokemon trumpets, or was that the one with the
Well, no, that was Hal's Hole-in-One golf trumpets and Earthbound.
Yeah. I mean,
that was in that podcast.
I think what sticks out is just the ending of that, because a lot of the time at the end of the podcast we'll have a little snippet of something that's funny that we like to throw in. I love that bit. But I just cracked up because we had the whole music thing fade out, and then instead of some random commentary at the end, we just had trumpets going, and it was wonderful.
The little end of podcast blurb is definitely my favorite part.
Yeah, just skip to the ending. Don't care about the rest of the podcast.
There have been a couple times where I've been like, I'm just going to go through and listen to a couple podcast endings. Like, I don't have time for a full podcast. I'm just going to listen to a couple endings. Get some highlights.
I have to say, it took, as Paul could attest to, it took me a long time to warm up to the podcasts, because in the very early days, and it's really interesting to be posting the oldest ones and have a couple of comments from our listeners / viewers about how different they are, and wow, this was so long ago. But, it was a little rocky sometimes because it was just people sort of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. And then after we started to organize it a little more, Mike Ridgway had it, Michael Gray had it, and then putting their own spin on it and trying to work it into some sort of a cohesive thing. And then Jeddy took it over. And, we as a staff were sort of working through, okay, how do we podcast? What do we talk about? How can we possibly stay on topic? And over the years, it's gotten to be solidly, reliably entertaining. It took me a long time to warm up to it because a lot of the time I'd look at, I'm looking at things again. Stop looking at things. I'd listen to things. I'd listen to it, and I wouldn't be totally on board because of whatever the theme was that we were talking about.
Nobody would know about.
Yeah, nobody would know. That was a recurring theme for a while of let's talk about something that nobody knows. That's why number 33 sticks out in my mind so much, because we were talking about 3D games, and that was, I think, about the beginning of the string of podcasts where anytime I showed up, I had no idea what to talk about. I just had nothing worthwhile that I could contribute. So there's a stretch of time where I'm like, I don't know what to talk about. This is not relevant to my interests at all. But we started to find out what are things that people like talking about, what's a good group dynamic, what's the right number of podcasters, and just some of the little ways that we switched it up. Like we had our special guest for the Turtle Calls, we had the 50th podcast extravaganza, all of the different things that we were doing, and it really started to take off. So I'm very pleased with how far along it's come, and how solid of a podcast it is now.
It is strange to think back and think like, oh yeah, like I mean, there was the Mike Ridgway era, and then there was the Michael Gray playing the piano and singing a podcast introduction like that. Because I remember being really into listening to the podcast during the Michael Gray era, where there was a lot of They Might Be Giants references and him singing like a Disney tune, but about the podcast. And then when I took over, and there was a lot of, we'd just talk about Disney and Nicktoons of the podcast, and then trying to have topics which never worked, because even in the topics that everyone would be like, yeah, man, I want to talk about that, well, then he wouldn't show up. You know, like we'd have something that Mike Ridgway would be like, oh man, I know all about that, and then he would show up, nobody else would. So there was no discussion, it was just, this is the topic, let's continue to talk about Nicktoons.
Well, and I think also, Jeddy, you've come a long way as a moderator for the podcast as well. I think you've really gotten a good grasp of how to move conversations along and even get us back onto topic when we're completely flying out of control. Yeah,
it's true. It's a skill.
And I love the intro and the outro, the music that we have. Thank you, Medio, Mateo, Gradius.
Depending on your regional
really good podcast. I mean, it gets me energized. I'm like, yeah, podcast.
Yes. Yeah, because I've thought about, do we want a different one after years of using this? But I don't know, it's difficult to abandon a classic.
I like. Is there a full,
There is a full song.
Right. Is it longer than what we hear?
Yeah, it's like at least 2 minutes long. Let me go.
Okay. Because I could, when it fades out, I could kind of hear how it might fade, right into the ending theme, the ending bit that goes on. But
yeah, it's a 2 minute.
If there's a full theme, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah.
We did post about it, right? Did we post the full version when it was first announced?
Maybe.
I haven't been able to podcast theme. Maybe I just didn't look very hard.
Part of the issue is that if you post a link to an MP3, and this is a problem that I've had with trying to link to download the podcast on the page, is that it automatically gets converted into the audio player. And then also I believe if we were to put a link, or if we were to try to include, even as a playable thing, just the song, it would be posted in the podcast feed and go up on iTunes as part of the podcast.
All right, I'll have to listen to that at some point.
Yes, so this email completed. I know none of this stuff has to do with video games. These are questions that came to mind. Parmesan. Yeah, somewhat of a regular.
He's the moose, I think.
Moose?
I think his YouTube icon is a moose.
Oh.
In a suit.
Okay. Questions and stuffs. Hello, staff of GameCola. Hope the podcast is going well. Just wanted to say hello and can't wait to hear this podcast. Okay, first up.
Okay, I may or may not have told this person that we were recording right now.
I kind of thought so, considering that we got it half an hour into recording. How are all of you today? Good? Good. Second.
Oh, okay.
During my summer break from college, I am going to try and beat several of my childhood favorite games and many other titles. Are there any games to which you all suggest I should try and possible beat? Hoping they are not too difficult and I can actually acquire said game. It would be much appreciated.
Well, we need to narrow it down a little bit. Some sort of genre or system or something.
He'll play anything.
I guess when I think of games to end this is a thing that I can't stand is when people say try and do. Because he's going to try, and he's also going to beat several of the games. Separately.
Instead of try to beat, it's try and beat. I'm going to try, but I'm also going to... it's not
separate,
wrong.
He's guaranteed to beat them. But he's also going to try. It's not said what he's trying.
He's just giving you he's going to give you the process. I'm going to try, and then I will be done trying when I beat it. After you beat it, you're done trying. You're trying to beat it, and then you beat it.
Yeah.
So thing 1 and then thing 2.
He has that persistence.
I guess it's sort of like, is the question sort of along the lines of what are some of the, like, what, the games that, like, I don't want to say you should play, because that's not what I mean, but, like,
Yeah.
you know how they're, like, those films where it's, like, these are the basic films that everyone's watched, and so, like you want to be able to understand Rosebud, and, do or do not, there is no try and beat.
Well, I guess the thing is, whenever I think of games that people are going to try to beat, like, I don't think of, like, a 60-hour RPG. I think of, like, a 4-hour platformer, you know? Like, things that they can just pop out 8 games and, you know, beat them all. So I'm not sure. And then again, for me, like, the last time my brother was here visiting, you know, he sat down and did that, but he did it with all of our old Super Nintendo games. But for somebody else, like, they might not be interested in Super Nintendo games, so I can't really help you choose, you know, PC games or something.
Just sort of thinking about it, like, the early main series Mario games are generally ones where it's like, a lot of the time people will just sort of assume that you've played those, so it's nice to have actually played those. Probably should, if you haven't played a Sonic game before, that's always good to at least try a Sonic game to see if you like it, because Sonic is definitely one of those. I think it's like early Sonic, like 2D Sonic, it's you love it or you hate it. And then 3D Sonic is you hate it or you tolerate it. A lot of the time it feels like, from my experience at least.
Sonic 06 that's everyone's favorite, or?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think after Sonic 06, like, Sonic 06 just set the bar so high that, yeah. No, you don't have to play Sonic 06. Please do not play Sonic 06 for enjoyment. It's probably not as bad. I think Matt Jonas is sort of a point of contention where it's like, it's not as bad as everyone says. But I still wouldn't. If you haven't played Sonic before, I would not recommend it.
Your starting point.
Yeah. Let's see. What are some? Chrono Trigger would be, if you haven't played Chrono Trigger before.
Yeah, I mean, people would. Yeah, if we're going with Chrono Trigger, also toss in like Earthbound.
Yep, Earthbound. If you're gonna be listening to lots of GameCola stuff, you might want to try Phoenix Wright.
Oh yeah, definitely.
What are some? A Mega Man. You should probably do some Mega Man.
A Mega Man, just any.
A Mega Man. I mean, like, you're gonna if you detest or love one of the Mega Mans, if you have like really strong emotions about it, they're probably gonna be roughly the same throughout at least whatever series that you're playing.
And if you wanted to do more long form RPGs, Baldur's Gate is awesome and a classic. The Diablo games are awesome and classic.
What are games that we're always going on about here? Phoenix Wright is definitely one of them. Mega Man is another. What's another one that's like...
Crystalis. Don't know if I'd suggest that as a game to try to beat if you've never played it before.
Right. I feel like there's one that I'm just missing that I'm going to feel really stupid when I think about it.
Finish Deponia. He has it, and he hasn't finished it.
Yeah, adventure games are good to throw on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any of the Quest games. King's Quest, Space Quest, Police Quest.
For ice cream.
Nice.
Any of the Monkey Islands.
Oh yeah, Monkey Island.
Well, maybe not any of the Monkey Islands. You really should start with Secret of Monkey Island or just jump straight to Tales of Monkey Island.
And then play them all.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the top. Yeah, I mean, if you want something that has extensive GameCola coverage, there's the Zero Escape and 999 playthroughs.
Yeah. Deja Vu. That kind of falls under the adventure game category. That's a GameCola relevant one.
Phoenix Wright is definitely one of the ones. Phoenix Wright has made it into a lot of the top all-time stuff. Ones that are about like specific games. Yeah, I feel like we've offered a good amount of suggestions.
I mean, and just in general, if there's any major series that you haven't tried a game for, you know, if you've never played a Metroid, if you've never played a Final Fantasy, if you've never played, you know, something from some series that everybody's always talking about, that's always good to just give a shot. Third, if you were stuck in cyberspace and the internet, what would be the first place you would visit and why? Would you stay or would you try to escape?
Cyberspace and the internet at the same time?
And both cyberspace and the internet.
At the same time.
Yeah. I mean, at least we're not also stuck in the World Wide Web.
Oh gosh,
But
what would we do?
what would be the first place I would visit and why? GameCola.net, gaming outside the mainstream. I think that speaks for itself.
Is this a quantum geek situation or not? Like, are we physically transported wholly into the video game, or is our body still outside and our mind still in there? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, like, are we talking, freakazoid? Like, you gotta give us more information here.
I would imagine the idea is that you don't need to worry about getting out at some point. Because obviously, like, if you were in, the first thing I would do if I were in the internet would probably be, I'm gonna make sure I can get out of here. This is cool.
I tried to get out.
So let's go the route where you can get out whenever you want, but maybe you can't go back in, so you might as well explore everything while you're here.
Sidebar, Jeddy, I think you meant reboot?
No, freakazoid. Like, in the opening, he gets zapped in cyberspace.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking of.
I love freakazoid. Great job.
It's literally in the song, Nathaniel.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually ever spends time in the internet, though.
He does, but not. He was like one episode.
It was like the first episode, and then he just turns into Freakazoid whenever he wants.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I spend all day on the internet anyway. I mean, it's part of my job. What would the difference be? Like, would I literally, like, when I'm building websites at that point, am I, like, picking up code and, like, setting it? Like, I'm chiseling out, brackets and, like, making homemade, handmade, artisan HTML tags?
I imagine it'd be like Tron.
Yeah.
I don't know, how would you do much of anything?
That's true. Yeah, Tron is another one where somebody gets inside the computer.
Well, you've also got, like, the digital world stuff, like, you've got Digimon, you've got your, Cyber Chase.
Cyber Chase.
Cyber Chase is... what else? There was the one episode of Fairly Odd Parents, where he goes in the internet.
Yep.
I'm trying to think, what are some other ones? Going in the internet is, like...
Well, I mean, there's the Futurama episode.
I don't know if I've seen that
Maybe
one
Pearl.
yet. Do you know what season that's in?
I think it was one of the early episodes, but I think they also go back a few times.
I'll look. I don't remember that one off the top of my head.
But then you've got things like Shadowrun and Denocoil, where you have an internet world overlaid on top of this world. So
yeah.
You can go back and forth between them using special glasses, like Google Glass style things.
Shadowrun. Like, I know it's a real thing, just I always think of the Super Nintendo game.
I've only ever played tabletop.
You should try the Super Nintendo game sometime. They had a lot of interesting concepts that they tried to pull off, and it's only... My understanding is that it's only kind of tangentially related to Shadowrun. Like the rest of the universe.
Yeah. Well, and then you've got Sam and Max, the one episode. Oh, I would totally go to the convenience store a la tavern that they've got there. Because they did up, what's his name?
Bosco.
Yeah, Bosco. They did up Bosco's, like a fantasy-style tavern hub. So you go into ye old Bosco's.
So are we good on that question then, I guess?
I think so. Maybe.
We kind of talked around the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of gave our own answers. So, okay, fourth, as in, like, go forth. Like, it's not number 4, it's not the...
We gotcha.
If you could be any Phoenix Wright or Professor Layton character, who would that be and why?
Bikini, because I already look like her.
Is that... I don't even know if that's Professor Layton or Phoenix Wright.
Sister Bikini, she's the nun.
Still doesn't answer my question.
She's from Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix Wright. She's a crazy sister who says inappropriate things, and it has a rather voluptuous build. So I actually want to cosplay as her sometime.
I've only really played Professor Layton. I think... Well, there's Professor... I don't know. I've only played the first one, I think, and even that one not all the way through. So, like, I don't know if there are recurring characters outside of Professor Layton and the kid, who I think his name is Lucas? Yeah. So, like, there it's like, would you like to be a character in the Phoenix Wright universe, or Professor Layton or Lucas? I think it would be fun to be Professor Layton, wear a top hat, and make people solve puzzles for me. Like, now, sir, is that going to be cash or credit? This reminds me of a puzzle. Here, you take this. I'm going to leave now. Solve that puzzle. Get back to me on that. I'm going to go and fill some jars with water, but they're not measured, so I'm going to have to, like, pour them into other jars. And get a right amount. Even though you could just, like, pour into the jar until it is full, and then stop. So.
I don't really know. That's my answer. There are too many characters in both of those series.
Do we have any other answers?
I feel like I had something else to say. Are you ready for the next one?
I guess.
Sure.
Fifth, which game do you own that has the most hours clocked in on it?
Papers, Please. I've plugged like 30-some hours into that dumb game.
Only 30-some? I think I have like 230-something into Torchlight 2.
I think Mia Fey.
Were you still thinking about that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we onto a new question?
Or is that how many hours you want to spend with that character?
Oh, actually, that's a lie. I think the game I have the most hours clocked into is Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, which has like 40 hours. Sorry.
I would venture to say, this is kind of a lame answer, but I would venture to say probably Minecraft.
Yeah, if I had to include any of the MMOs that I've played, I would have to pick between, Ragnarok, Final Fantasy XI.
I think it'd have to be either one of the sandbox games that I mentioned earlier, or one of the things with the level editor, because I've lost entire weekends working on maps for various games, let alone sitting down and playing them with people, or going back and trying the campaign mode separately to that. So it very easily could be something like Worms Armageddon, which I played a lot of in college, or it could be that game, the one that goes. What am I thinking of? Yeah, like Heroes of Might and Magic 3, any of the ones that I mentioned before. Otherwise, one of the RPGs, either Chrono Trigger or Earthbound, I think, that I've played repeatedly over the years. That's a reasonable time investment to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm not counting Sims.
Yoshi's Island is probably up there for me, because I spent a lot of time on that game, but I wasn't necessarily good at it when I got it. And so it's it's got a lot of levels. It's like 6 worlds of 8 levels. And then you got in the Game Boy version, you've also got the 2 bonus levels per world. So that's 60 levels. And I've played through it a couple times. So that might be up there.
Actually, Morrowind might... I don't know. I've replayed things like Chrono Trigger so many times that I assume that they, just by nature of the game being, 20, 30, 40 hours at a clip, you play it more than a couple times, sure. But as far as one single gaming experience and not just starting the game over again, that award goes to Morrowind, which was, 200-something hours?
Yeah, if I counted up all the hours I put into WoW, that would probably beat everything else combined. But I just opened up Steam to take a look at mine. I got 220 hours into the original Torchlight, 208 into Torchlight 2.
Well, how about Reciteer?
And 141 with Reciteer. So that one is... Yeah, that's all. I play too many games.
It got to the point where she was borrowing my computer because it's faster than hers and runs the shiny graphics of Torchlight 2, where I had her start plugging in a separate mouse because of the hours and hours spent rapidly clicking on things.
Oh yeah,
and it started to destroy my old mouse.
I can certainly say what my Steam one is as soon as it loads, it's updating. But yeah, I would probably say Minecraft just because it's it's a sandbox game, but it's just a sandbox. And you can play it with people, and you can just
play
sort of
without people.
Yes, that too. The other thing that you can do with a video game. And there's a different way. Like you can do like the different modes where you've got survival, or you can just like build a thing. Like I think one time I tried to build the robot masters out of wool.
Not even
Sheep Man. Yeah.
Actually, I did do Sheep Man. Like one time, I started the project twice. Actually, and then there was another time where I tried to build, I think, Wily Machine 6, the first form.
Ambitious.
Or whatever the one from Mega Man 6 is.
Yep.
The first form. And I actually got really far. And then like I was like on. Let me see. I'm gonna look at it. I think I can remember what the part was, but I like messed up. Like I got one part that was like super unaligned. I was gonna have to redo so much of it, and so I just gave up and stopped. But I think I had done the eyes. I think I was near the top of the. I think I was doing one of the red. If you look at the picture, there's like a little red part near the top of the skull eyes. I think I had gotten up to there. Like I had done the pinwheels, and I had done all the blue parts and most of the skull face, and I got there and I like did the red part wrong, like completely wrong, and I just gave up because I was gonna have to redo so much. But now that I have now that Steam is open, let's see. I actually put a lot of time into Besiege. I put a lot. I think Starbound. I've put a good amount of time into that. Starbound I've put in 36 hours. Terraria 21, so more into Starbound. Yeah, other than that, those are the only ones that have a whole lot.
Number 6, plans for the summer?
I'm in New York right now, so that's weird.
I mean, for me, if you're asking me plans for summer, I live in Florida, so that was like 3 months ago that it started. And it'll be for another 3, 4, 5 months.
I'm going to Poland in a month, so that's cool.
It's exciting.
Otherwise, I'll be sitting here being useless playing Sims.
Oh, keep in mind writing a get out of your house.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about today, so I'll keep that in mind.
I'll probably beat Mega Man Unlimited at some point. Or play Shovel Knight. I need to do that. I need to play Shovel Knight. I keep telling myself I need to play Shovel Knight because everyone says it's like Mega Man, and I'm not yet convinced. But if it is like Mega Man, I will be very happy.
I kind of feel like, I mean, I've never played it, but I don't imagine it being like Mega Man. Like, I feel like that's just one of those, like, oh, it tastes like chicken. It's like, no, you've just never really tasted that many foods. Like, you have nothing else to compare it to, so.
There are definitely some visual, there's some, like, ostensible comparisons, like the way the bosses work, and, like, how there's kind of, like, the levels, I could see it, but, like, sort of, like, does it play like Mega Man? And it's not, like, gonna be bad, necessarily, if it doesn't play like Mega Man. But I don't know. It's a hefty claim, and there have definitely been games where it's like, yeah, this kind of looks like Mega Man, but like it does not like play like Mega Man or feel like Mega Man.
Yeah, like I feel like they're just saying, well, it's a 2D action game with Nintendo style graphics.
If you don't get like any sort of power upgrade, then it's like, no, that's not Mega Man. That's just any side-scrolling game where you could shoot things.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have something that is at least a little similar to the weapon power-up mechanic, like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but, like, if you don't change throughout the whole game, then it's not Mega Man. That's not Mega Man.
Changing weapons to complete certain tasks or whatever, like...
Well, that's what's on my roster for the summer, at least as far as the video games go.
Yeah.
I'm actually eschewing technology this summer because I'm going to Pennsic, which is a event run by the Society for Creative Anachronisms. It's basically a whole group of historical reenactors go to this place and hit each other with weaponry and learn how to weave and learn how to bake things without ovens and basically learn how to live like a historical person. So I have a persona and I already do a lot of textile arts, and we just bought a bow for me, so I'm going to go shoot archery and weave for 2 weeks.
It's sort of like, it's sort of like real life video game.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's like a real life simulator.
It's a life simulator.
And during those 2 weeks while she's out of the house, I'm taking a week off from work so that I can kick around the house and do nothing. And that's probably when I'm going to get caught up on recording Mega Man videos.
Yay.
Very exciting.
I know, we're also thrilled.
Almost as exciting as spending a week.
Yeah, it doesn't compare.
Honestly, I don't have any plans. 7th. Have you played? have any of you played Patapon? If so, what are your opinions?
I have not.
I am familiar with it, but that's the extent of it.
There's apparently a bunch of Patapon games. I just typed it in, and the first result was Patapon 4.
The only Patapan I know is the noise the little drummer boy makes. So what is Patapan?
Patapon is a video game published for the PlayStation Portable handheld game console.
Are you reading this off Wikipedia?
No,
he just talks like that normally.
Yeah, what would give you that impression? Combining gameplay features of a rhythm game hyperlink and a god game hyperlink. Let's see, that's where the name comes from.
It's Pikmin with music.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
it looks like. I'm not getting it. It's not showing me any screenshots.
As I recall, it's sort of like a black and white stick figure kind of a, little
Mhm.
critters running around and you're just beating your drum and getting them to march in time with it. Something to that effect.
Okay.
By beating traditional talking drums, which is a hyperlink, so it's not something that's made up. I'm guessing. Oh, it's like the kind of drum that has the wires all along the side, so you can pull the wires and it makes the drum make a different sound. So you can make it go boom, boom. Like that.
That was
exactly.
a fun sound effect.
That wasn't me. That was me playing an audio clip. I don't know if you noticed.
Load that up real quick.
Yeah. So that's what that is. I have not played it. I don't have a PSP.
I
So-
do. It's amazing. I just started collecting systems that I don't have, and so I have a PSP now, which is how I'm playing Powered Up. But all of a sudden I'm all hip and modern, if that's what the PSP qualifies me for.
It's funny is you might have noticed that there's a draft in the reviews of an Android game.
Yeah, I deleted it. Oh, wait, no, I didn't.
But I don't have a smartphone. I still only have my old...
You can say it. It's a dumb phone.
It is a dumb phone. But I like it anyway. But yes, I have played a modern game on my girlfriend's cell phone recently.
It's dangerous talk, Jeddy. You're gonna upset the natural order of things.
I know, me playing not only a modern game, but a mobile game. I know.
It is the end times.
It is the end times. We've been on here almost 3 hours, and I need dessert.
Hey, well, this email, we were at the end, it says, whoa!
As any good email should.
It starts out caps and then it gets lowercase. So it goes from whoa to ooh.
I think that's going away. Getting quieter as you go further off.
Or whoa! Yeah, I know this was a lot, but was my first time and I wanted to get all of the basics out of the way, haha. Can't wait to hear your answers. Camera94.
I
Cool.
told them to email too.
Well, I think that was a pretty successful podcast, so thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can always check out our actual internet website, GameCola.net, gaming outside the mainstream. If you didn't see this on YouTube, you can check us out on YouTube. We are gc.net, the letter G, the letter C, the word dot, and the word net. We're also on iTunes, where you can go to rate us highly. If you don't want to rate us highly, then, we're probably not actually on iTunes in that case, so don't bother looking. We're also on Facebook, where you can search for us. Just search for GameCola. We're also on Twitter, where you can find us at GameCola. I think that's everything. So, again, thank you, everyone. This was podcast number 85. Goodbye, everybody. but I like it anyway. Hold on. Settings. Ringtone. Oh. Hold on. No, stop that. Oh, I want to go down to songs, don't I? I can play you some classics. Maybe that's a little loud. Oh yeah, some classical music. Oh.
The worst part is, the only thing I'm thinking right now is, so this is where our next YouTube copyright strike is coming from.